think I finally got my background lighting fixed, so that was something. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I am Dan Vespris, and trades, they are a happening. You guys know I don't really follow the draft, so I'm not going to do a draft show myself. We'll get some guests on possibly in the next few days or possibly early next week that can tell you a bit more about what the good and bad results were from the NBA draft, which is happening quite shortly. That is coming up around the corner. But I am here to tell you about the things that we know a little bit more about, and that is trades. Before that, please hit that like button and subscribe if you're taking this content in. Actually, no matter where you're taking this content in, please subscribe. We are still somehow kind of slowly ticking up in subscribers, even over on the YouTube side, which is very cool to see in the dead of the off season. Thank you all for doing that. Let's work through these trades one by one. We'll see how far we get today. We might be able to cover them all. We'll see. You know how I roll with these things. We see how far we can get. If we put a pin in it, we put a pin in it. First one, Shams Charania, as always, on it because there really isn't anybody else in the news breaking space anymore. Breaking, the Boston Celtics have traded Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trail Blazers for Anfernee Simons and 2 second-round picks, sources tell ESPN. Let's start with this one from a reality standpoint, which is how in the crap did the Celtics get Simons and 2 picks? I don't understand that one at all. Now, I love Jrue Holiday. He is certainly the better player between these two guys. But Holiday is also entering the second year of a 4-year, $134 million deal, where the last season is a player option, but you figure by that point in his career, he'll be 37 years old. He's going to be taking his $37 million at 37 years. And then for the Celtics to somehow get out from under all of that and also get a at least relatively useful player back is pretty remarkable. Simons has just $28 million left on his contract for this coming season, and then he's a free agent. So I guess to that end, you're like, well, the Celtics are going to have to figure out if this is someone that they could re-sign, if this is somebody that they try to move, et cetera, et cetera. But man, got out from a ton of money and got picks and a player back. It's quite a move. From a fantasy standpoint, it's really hard to say what the Celtics are going to be and what Anfernee Simons is going to be on Boston, because one of the other trades that we might get to on today's show is that Kristaps Porzingis is now a member of the Atlanta Hawks. So the Celtics are gutting this roster with no Jason Tatum and a ton of money invested in it and sort of nowhere to go. So is Derek White going to be there? Will frickin' wildly overpaid love me some Jaylen Brown, go Cal Bears, but he's making way more money than he needs to be. Will they try to get out from under that contract? So, is this going to be like Anfernee Simons moving to another Portland from the last couple of years, or do things stay somewhat static from this point on? Is it going to be Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Anfernee Simons, and the others, and nothing else big happens in Boston? We don't know. But as of right this moment, Jason Tatum's 20 shots are out for the year. We've now removed Jrue Holiday's 9 shots per game. Kristaps Porzingis was at 14 shots per game this last year. So there is usage by the bowlful available to the remaining Boston Celtics. And there's really only so much that Jaylen Brown can do. He could take 2-3 more shots per game, something like that. But someone's going to have to pick up some chunk of like 40 other shots that we just eliminated due to injury and trade. Simons took 16 shots a game for the Blazers this last year. He averaged 19 points, 3 threes, little under 3 rebounds, close to 5 assists. A steal, basically doesn't block shots. Bad field goal, good free throw. And the turnovers were fine. Nothing spectacular there. An assist to turnover ratio as well. Played 70 games for that Blazers team, which is good, considering it wasn't clear that they were going to be hyper competitive all year. And then they ended up being somewhat competitive all year. So all that stuff points to kind of decent signs. You guys know me. I'm not a huge Anfernee Simons fantasy guy, but if you're punting field goal, he does get a pretty nice boost in overall value, and that pulls him inside the top 100. It feels like replicating what happened last year is a possibility because Derek White is not going to be a massive usage suck in Boston. That's just not really what his game is. Peyton Pritchard will up his shots per game, and Jaylen Brown will as well. But the guy that's going to get a big chunk now is the guy they just brought in Simon. So I think you're looking at probably somewhat of a repeat for Simons of what he was able to do in Portland this last year. Maybe efficiency goes up playing in a better environment. I don't know. But he's probably a guy that also gets a little bit overdrafted because he scores a lot and hits a lot of three-pointers. Before we get to the Jrue Holiday side of the equation, a reminder that BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all sports betting action. Baseball is in full swing. Football season's right around the corner, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, scores, sports wagering info, and even live in-game betting on all that stuff that I just mentioned, plus UFC, plus tennis, plus soccer. Some of you call it football. That's also fine. Whatever you want to get down on, BetOnline is your spot. And if it's not sports, that's okay too. BetOnline has a casino that has a live casino element. They also have poker. They have video poker, video slots, all that kind of stuff available at BetOnline. Head to the website today. Take advantage of the industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses, weekly cash boosts as well. BetOnline. The game starts here. So the other way to read this trade is, well, Portland just gave up Anfernee Simons and draft capital to get Jrue Holiday, a player that, remember, the Blazers very briefly had before moving him to Boston. That was the Bucks sent him to Portland in the Damian Lillard trade, and then the Blazers moved him right along to Boston before he ever had a chance to suit up, because that was also an offseason deal for the Portland Trail Blazers. This time around, it somehow feels different. Last time around, it felt like Jrue Holiday was the sort of, we needed to get a nice fat contract in here to help come close to matching Damian Lillard's contract. And then, here's a whole bunch of Milwaukee's first-round picks and so on and so forth. So the Blazers were acquiring assets in that trade. In this trade, they're sending them out. And usually, not all the time, but usually, you can read into how a team feels about a player by whether or not they are gaining or losing draft capital. It's not 100%, but again, you guys know this about me. My goal in fantasy basketball, when I talk to you guys about this stuff, is to simplify how we think about fantasy basketball. And understanding the story here is the big part of the equation. Boston is trying to get off of salary, so that puts the Anfernee Simons thing a little bit murkier. I think he can do what he did last year, but murky is the best way I can use to describe it. The Blazers now are giving up 2 second-round picks to get Jrue Holiday. So either the plan is to try to shuttle him along to another team and maybe recoup more draft assets, or a different young player that maybe isn't quite so close, because Anfernee Simons is making a bunch of money now. Maybe you get a young player that's still, on rookie scale or something like that. But it feels like, at least at a glance, at the first, like, oh, here's what's going in each direction, like the Blazers want Jrue Holiday to be part of their veteran building block, whatever you want to call it, that helps get this very young team to a new level. Because when you look at the Blazers from last year, and they were, by all accounts, one of the big overachievers in reality basketball, the one thing that you could point out with this club and say that they're really lacking is a veteran presence of really any kind. You want to say DeAndre Ayton? I mean, that's not the veteran you want leading this team around. I know he's been in the league for a few years. Robert Williams is a veteran, but he's broken down. You need someone that can lead by example. And that's what Jrue Holiday could be for this team if that's what they decide to do with him. So now you look at last year. Anfernee Simons played about 33 minutes a game for Portland. They are bringing in fewer shots than they sent out. Does that mean that Jrue Holiday is going to be the guy to soak up a bunch of extra usage? That feels like a little bit of a stretch. But also, Jrue played 31 minutes a game last year and only took 9 shots per. So there's a few things going on here. And it all kind of points to an opportunity for a better fantasy season for Jrue Holiday. I couldn't really tell you how much better. I don't think we're going to get Jrue Holiday when he was a primary for the Pelicans. I don't even think we were going to get Jrue Holiday when he was a tertiary for the Milwaukee Bucks. And those are a couple of different things, because in New Orleans, there were seasons where he took 15, 16, 17 and change shots per game. In Milwaukee, he was at 14 twice. Then he was at 15. And some of that has to do with when Chris Middleton is in or out. But moved to Boston, took 10 shots last year, only 9.2 this season. It feels like, and again, this is contingent on the Blazers actually keeping him, they'll probably want to play him 32 minutes a game and probably would prefer that he get up to 11 or 12 shots a night instead of 9. Blazers have young guys. There's no doubt about that. They've got young dudes on that team that are going to be more than willing to step into a larger role. a-comin will probably take an extra shot. Deni Avdija will take more shots. We saw this when those guys were out. Jeremy Grant, disgusting fantasy game and all. He'll take more shots. Shaedon Sharpe took 15 shots a game last year. Again, there's only so much more you can ask a guy who's not super efficient to do, but he probably will. Scoot Henderson also. But again, if we're just talking about that 7-shot gap between Jrue Holiday and Anfernee Simons from last year, you can slot one on each of those guys, and it still puts Jrue back up at a better fantasy spot. In terms of the players around them, I don't think this changes all that much, as everybody's going to be overdrafting everyone in Boston anyway with Jason Tatum out. Although, again, I'd still hard charge Derek White if somebody would let you do it. And then in Portland, I think people are still mostly confused or concerned about what's going on out there in terms of a fantasy thing. But this is helpful. I don't care how many shots Jrue Holiday takes this year. It won't be as many as Anfernee Simons took last year. So small bumps to Toumani Camara, who's probably going to get a little bit of a bump just by growing in his natural game. Deni Avdija had big weeks and poor weeks, and it has a lot to do with who's in and who's out around him. So we'll keep some tabs on that. He's likely to get overdrafted a little bit this year because of the popcorn numbers with some knocks on the efficiency. Jeremy Grant, you guys know I don't really want anything to do with. I don't think it impacts the center rotation all that much, but I do think that Donovan Clingan is going to be the guy. And then Shaedon Sharpe is more of a points league type of player, but figures to get a lot of volume as this team is constructed. Does Scoot Henderson see an increase in role? Probably not, unless he earns it on his own. He averaged 27 minutes a game last year. Bad at both percentages. The assists were fine, but not high enough. Same story with steals. Probably not a road I'm going down anyway either. So Jrue Holiday, believe it or not, probably the Portland Trailblazer that I would want to look at the hardest. Donovan Clingan is up there, as is Toumani Camara. These guys that don't score a bunch, that'll slide a little bit under the radar and then become much more interesting. And then over on the Boston side, we already talked about it. I don't think it changes things that much. Maybe it puts a little bit of a hole in what you thought Peyton Pritchard might grow into. But Jaylen Brown is going to get a ton of shots. Pritchard's going to get plenty. Derek White was already really, really, really good, provided these guys were actually there. And then you'll see some other guys pick up a few as well. Luke Cornett will play more. Al Horford will play more. And don't worry, we'll talk about Big Al possibly in a few minutes here. I mean, it's all going to come down to timing. He's a free agent, by the way. The Celtics don't really have... I mean, Luke Cornett right now is the starting center, but you've got to think that they'll look at bringing back some kind of veteran. In any event, that's where that's at. Okay, that's trade number 1. Let's see if we can't figure out if we've got enough time to do trade number 2. Where was that one? Trade number 2 that happened in a row. Yes, that was this one. Yeah, we're not going to get to Kristaps Porzingis today. I feel pretty confident of that. Trade number 2 that went down. This was yesterday around lunchtime, so almost exactly a 1 day ago. Shams tweets again, quote, "The New Orleans Pelicans are trading CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a future second-round pick to the Washington Wizards for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the number 40 pick, sources tell ESPN. This is, again, a salary move more than anything else. The Washington Wizards were sort of saddled with a Jordan Poole contract that I don't think they were all that thrilled about. Poole still has $32 million this year and $34 million next year. Saddiq Bey, just $6 million each of the next 2 years, so not a huge deal there. But they do now get out from Jordan Poole, who's, he was fine last year, but overall, he is also not very good. The Pelicans, this is all very screwy. The Pelicans move more money this coming season. So they lowered their tax situation for this year, but more guaranteed money overall. CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk are each expiring deals this coming season. McCollum is at $31 million. Olynyk is at about 14. So that's about 45-ish combined between those two guys. 44. Whatever. Hair splitting. We're hair splitting over here. So the Pels got a little bit of a break this coming season just by a few $1 million, but now they're locked into Jordan Poole for an extra season. Same with Saddiq Bey, although that one's a much more manageable contract. They also get the number 40 pick in this draft, so presumably they are guys that the Pelicans would want, and they're giving up a future second-round pick. We'll learn more about that as we go. Just from a straight, who got better standpoint, it almost doesn't matter because the Wizards are not trying to get better, and you can bet your butt that they're going to be attempting to move both of these guys, and they should be able to, especially Kelly Olynyk. His salary feels very movable, especially if all they're looking for is, a couple of second-round picks or something like that. I know teams are clutching their picks much tighter these days with the most recent CBA, but at the same time, Olynyk's going to be able to help somebody down the stretch next year. From a fantasy standpoint, I can't imagine that Olynyk's going to have a whole lot of value in Washington. I guess we never know because Jonas Valanciunas had stretches where he posted some value, but it also kind of seems like Alex Sarr would probably need to be out for that to be a thing. Meanwhile, the Wizards are collecting aged veterans at this point. Chris Middleton opted into his $33 million for this coming year. Marcus Smart is owed $22 million for this coming season, and now they've got CJ McCollum, another very old goat, on the hook for $31 million as well. I don't know if those guys are going to play. They're going to be trying to trade all of them because they're all, what now? Expiring contracts. This is actually, I think, a really good move for the Wizards. The Wizards don't have that much money committed beyond this coming season. Their salary situation becomes ridiculously manageable after 25-26. Chris Middleton comes off the books. Marcus Smart comes off the books. Malcolm Brogdon is already off the books. And so then, and they just traded for two, Olynyk on top of McCollum, I should mention. So then they got a bunch of young guys. Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Corey Kispert, whose extension does kick in this coming season. So he's no longer on his rookie deal. Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George. These guys are all, with the exception of now Kispert, on rookie-level salaries. So they have nothing committed. Nothing, basically, after this coming season. They have a projected salary cap of $68 million after this year. There's nothing at all committed. So the Wizards are right at that sort of tanking apex. This is you got to tank as hard as humanly possible for one more year. It would be insane for them to do otherwise, to play Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart and now CJ McCollum big minutes all season long. No chance. And the beautiful part is, even if they played those guys big minutes for part of the year, they're still going to lose basketball games. So what you're looking at here is a team that is going to want to play Alex Sarr a lot. They're going to want to get minutes for Coulibaly. We would assume Bub Carrington and Keyshawn George are kind of the four extremely young core guys on the Wizards. But that still leaves 100, 120-ish minutes unaccounted for that can fall to the likes of Middleton and Smart and McCollum. I don't know that I would target any of those guys in a head-to-head format because you're looking at a ton of rest days throughout the season and then a ton more clustered in probably your fantasy playoffs. If you wanted to take a Roto Games Cap shot on any of those three guys, it probably has to be Middleton, who I loathe, and I've refused to draft him for multiple seasons in a row now. But of those three guys, he also has the most translatable fantasy game. And you're just trying to milk enough out of him to get him traded. And that's the other part of this thing. There's like this idea of a showcase where, teams like, oh, they're just showcasing their guys so they can get him traded. More than anything, if teams are going to try to copy what the Thunder did, which was they had these veterans and they turned them loose, Al Horford, Chris Paul, etc., and then they were able to move these guys for draft capital. So the Wizards need Chris Middleton to look good. They would like Marcus Smart to look good. I'm sure they'd like CJ McCollum to look good because any one of those guys, if they look good enough, could fetch the Wizards more draft assets, which they could either use or package in a trade as they start to come out of their tank, probably after one more season of being absolutely terrible. So head-to-head, I wouldn't touch those guys. Roto, you might think about Chris Middleton. As far as the other guys on the Wizards are concerned, like picking up CJ McCollum instead of Jordan Poole probably makes things easier on the likes of Bub Carrington and Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr and these guys that are going to rely on a smarter brand of basketball to get their scores. And Jordan Poole is not exactly known for playing a smarter brand of basketball. But this team is crazy young now. Sarr is 20. Bilal is 20. Kispert's 26. He's like a grandpa. Bub Carrington's 19. Keyshawn George, 21. Justin Champagnie, who I forgot about there, he's 23. This team is absurdly young. So expect them to be very, very bad. Again, expect Alex Sarr to put up a ton of numbers, and you just pray they're a little bit more efficient this year. We talked about him a couple shows back as someone I might consider as kind of like a late flyer type. I don't think I'm drafting Coulibaly, but again, if it's another guy, much like with Keyshawn George, if they get their efficiency stuff squared away, those guys could make a leap forward. And then Bub Carrington is, we're going to be debating these. The Wizards are names that we're going to be debating as we lead up to fantasy draft day, week, whatever, and whether we trust any of these guys enough to put them on our flyers board. The best fantasy game of the bunch probably belongs to Keyshawn George. But he can't shoot. Same story with Alex Sarr, who can't shoot from field goal or free throw. At least Keyshawn George was not quite as awful. I mean, he wasn't very good at the free throw line either. Bub Carrington can shoot a little bit, but doesn't get defensive stats, doesn't really shoot many three-pointers. He was trying to build fantasy value with popcorn stats, and that wasn't quite enough either. And then Coulibaly, same kind of thing. Good popcorn stats, bad percentages. There's going to be a roll of the dice here. Someone's going to take a shot. I would consider Sarr or Keyshawn George towards the end. Of those two guys, Sarr is probably the safer bet because he's a center, and all these old goats are guards and wings. So those guys will be pushing the likes of Carrington and George and Bilal in a way that they just simply can't with Alex Sarr, whose main competition for minutes is a non-guaranteed contract right now that's hanging over Richaun Holmes. And I think JT Thor is like the third string center on this team right now. Yowza. All right, let's put a pin in it because if we started the next trade, we just wouldn't be able to get through it without rushing. And the next one, of course, is Kristaps Porzingis. So that's something we'll talk about either tomorrow or at some show down the line. I haven't, again, like usual, I haven't really plotted this whole thing out. We fly by the seat of our pants here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball during the offseason. And the seat of my pants, they are a-flying. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like, rate, subscribe on the way out. I'm Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Later.